With a background encompassing data visualization, product design, and urban design, Saloni Shah is an interdisciplinary designer who specializes in designing architecture, products, and visualizations to uncover captivating patterns from complex data. Her expertise lies in using data and digital technologies to create compelling and informative visual stories that engage and educate audiences about the impacts of climate change. She intends to use her skills to bridge the intersections between researchers, policymakers, and grassroots activists, and nudging systems to make informed decisions. She supports people and projects whose work is rooted in the mobilization of environmental, climate, racial, gender, and language justice. Throughout her career journey, Saloni continues to garner recognition through awards, talks, and workshops, solidifying her position as a thought leader in the intersection of design, data, and climate action. Please, let's welcome Saloni Shah.
Thank you so much. Let's get started. I'm hoping you all can see my screen. Perfect. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome everyone. I am Saloni, and today I'm thrilled to share with you how the incredible impact information design can have on saving forest ecosystems and driving climate action. A little about my journey. I started in architecture, dabbled in a lot of alternative and vernacular building systems, got intrigued by urban ecology, eventually moved in conservation and sustainable city projects. It was during one of these projects that I crossed paths with a researcher working on agroforestry, sparking my interest, and of course, setting me on a course to explore and visualize forests. I wanted this talk, I wanted this talk to be an insightful experience, leaving you with the inspiration to explore data within your own respective domain. So the presentation is structured in two main sections. First, I'm going to walk through the approach of design thinking, art of asking the right questions. Understanding these fundamentals is very crucial for unleashing the potential of data in any context. Following that, I'm going to dive into diverse spectrum of examples that I worked on in past couple of years. And I'm hoping that these real world instances will serve as a source of inspiration, offering a lot of ideas on how data can be effectively visualized. So let's start with design thinking. When COVID hit, I was brainstorming ideas for my thesis, and I was knee deep in exploring research on forest ecosystems. As you can see, I had a lot of questions. They were a dense mix of policy questions, research questions, just in general ownership questions. And I was trying to group these questions to form relationships. That's how I usually create and develop actual foundational concept for some of the projects that I've been working on. So that's the same process I was going through. This process was very important because forest is huge. Forest, the scope is crazy. You can do anything within it. But when you create these questions and group them, you can find a narrower scope that could help you further scope your research. So that's one portion of brainstorming that I was working on. Parallelly, reading news and recent events were just as important. As I was refining my conceptual framework, the devastating forest fires in Australia captured headlines. Driven by unfolding crisis, I started tracking the fires with some of the GIS mappers, seeking to comprehend the geography, the magnitude, and the factors, both natural and human-made, contributing to the factors. So as the days went by and I got more imagery, I could realize that this is moving this way. Why is it moving this way? How is it going to impact everything around it? Is there like cities? Are there natural species? Are those native forests? What's going on? So this is when a pivotal moment occurred when I encountered the definition of forest in Australia. I was trying to figure out that they're calling it Australian forest fires, but what actually are they trying to call forests? So astonishingly, Australia recognizes commercial plantations as part of its extensive forest cover. So they have a total of 134 million hectares of forest. 132 million hectares out of that are native forests, but 1.95 million hectares are commercial plantations that are also considered forests. And they had an ambiguous number of 0.47 million hectares of other forests, which I don't know what other forest is it, a park? So the realization underscored the importance of not only analyzing events in isolation, but also understanding the conceptual definitions that shape our perception of critical ecological landscapes. So I started looking over the international and national definitions to understand what is a forest. My focus extended beyond understanding the mere definition. I tried to understand who was creating these definitions, who is benefiting from these definitions, who is impacted by these definitions. And the more I read, it became clear that the concept of forest was much more nuanced than I had imagined. I started with like a rosy picture of forest that has animals, birds, insects, everything within it, and indigenous people taking care of it. But the actual legal definition was way off than that. So it was then I made the crucial realization that United Nations provide a loose definition, leaving it on each of the participant countries to develop its own interpretation. So moving on, the UNFCCC offers a perspective of let's define a forest area that's minimum of 0.05 hectares, and with only 10% of it needs to be actual tree cover. So to put it in perspective, this area is less than 1/10 of a football field, and you need 1/10 of that area to be actual trees for it to be considered forest. According to FAO, it is a little better than UNFCCC, I would say, but way off again because for the UNFCCC, they consider agricultural land as forest. So you can just clear everything, have a monoculture plantation, and still call it a forest. FAO was a little better there, where they said, okay, we need 5,000 meter squares with more than 10%, which was a little less than one football field, but you still need only 1/10 of it to be actual native trees. And you don't even have to have native trees. You can just grow anything for 10%, which is more than 5 meters in height, and still call it a forest. And the definition itself included rubber, wood, cork, and Christmas tree plantations. However, I was researching that just cannot be true. Like the environmental scientists would not agree to this definition. So during my research, I stumbled upon a couple of papers, but one paper caught my eye where 8 of the climate scientists collaborated on proposing an alternative definition. So according to their research and suggestions, a forest should be minimum of 1 hectare of land, which is almost 2 football fields, with 50% as the native species. So that has to have everything in the ecosystem, like from the trees, animals, mushrooms, the soil health, everything included. And in that, half of it should still be forest. And just to give you perspective, and this is 2 football fields with 1 football field covered with the species itself. So the significant consequence of these varied definitions is that a company or a government could potentially come, clear 90% of the native forest, establish an industrial plantation, and still call it forest. They have no actual forest loss and definition. So the highlights of this critical implications on how definitions could shape land use practices and environmental policies became crucial for my research. So I started building narratives, like building upon those questions became the foundation of my exploration. So I delved into understanding how deforestation was calculated, examined global policies like RED, different carbon markets aimed at reducing deforestation, and explored their impact on forests in general. This investigative process allowed me to construct a loose narrative, drawing from extensive research and engaging conversations I had with environmentalists who had very diverse and nuanced perspectives. Here, I want to take a minute and just highly encourage that if you ever create a narrative, please read both to and for and against opinions before making your narrative as a designer, as a practitioner, wherever you are. Because when I started this project, I was convinced that Red Plus would save forest and decrease deforestation. It was not until I did a lot of digging around and a lot of research and collected a lot of secondhand, firsthand data and analyzed it that I realized that it actually had little to no impact on reducing deforestation, but it actually adversely impacted indigenous protected lands. So the biggest challenge in my experience has always been creating an impactful narrative without any jargon to bridge the gap between subject experts and everyone else. Like if a neuroscientist comes to me and explains their terms, I'm going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'll have to do my work, simplify it. So like they'll have to explain me in a language that I could understand. So that's the kind of bridge that I had aimed to bridge with this process. So when I was happy with my previous flow, I started detailing it. So as you could see that any forestry credits are used to offset emissions of developed and transnational corporation. Like no one is going carbon neutral. You still have a functioning business. You can't go carbon neutral. You can reduce your emissions. And so to offset those emissions, they use carbon markets, which create a monetary value for the forest lands. And due to its loose definition, it creates land grabs and clearing of healthy forest ecosystems, leading to more deforestation. And due to deforestation, like the monoculture plantations would obviously not accommodate the same level of species and same level of interconnection, which accelerates the forest degradation, ultimately contributing in increasing emissions and then creating more policies to reduce those emissions. So it was a really complex loop that I came across while concluding my research. So now the question was, how do you show these overlaps, and how do you make it relatable and easier to digest for everyone else who's looking at it? So following the creation of that flow chart, I transitioned to the next phase, compiling of all the data I collected through my research. The primary objective was to employ straightforward visualizations, which are familiar to the audience in their daily lives. The intention is to present complex information in an accessible manner, leveraging visuals that resonate with audiences' everyday experience. And this approach ensures that the data becomes not just informative, but relatable and easily digestible to various audiences. This is a long project. I made a whole informational video. If you all want to see it, I think I would link it on the website, but I didn't want to take like 5 minutes to show that video itself. So let's transition from conceptual understanding to narratives. Now we have established a robust story backed by data. And the next step is to explore and visualize it. So over the past couple of years, I've had the privilege of collaborating on diverse array of projects and each offering unique insights. So let's kick off with art of hand sketching. Growing up with a grandmother who was an art teacher, hand sketching holds a special place for me. So one project set in what I'd like to call a long time ago, aimed to chronicle the development and transformation of contemporary cities. So I sketched this really long time ago. As you can see, the timeline commences with humble manual farming practices on small scale farms, eventually transitioning to emergence of industry that reshaped the urban landscape. The era of industrialization and mass production continues to alter the cityscape, like giving rise to skyscrapers that dominate the skyline. However, as the city modernizes, the presence of green spaces diminish significantly. This project concludes with an open-ended note, leaving the room for positive change, hinting the potential of sustainable cities that as the timeline continues. While the evolution in the previous project was a well-known pattern, let's take a look on trying to document invisible or maybe unnoticed patterns. This project aims to explore what truly creates a sense of space. So the plan you see here is of Municipal Market in Ahmedabad, India, where I was born. This market is situated adjacent to one of the busiest streets in the city. The Municipal Market, it experiences a high influx of visitors on daily basis. Giving you the context of what it is, it's a shopping center and a food market. And it has very interesting shopping center vibes. I don't think it is a mixture of a lot of things, which I'm going to show you. So once we had the base map, we started mapping the flow of people. It is a public space, so why not start with the public itself? So we started understanding how people interacted with the space. Where did they walk to? What were the desirable spaces to stop by? And as you can see, a lot of people stop by in similar areas, and we were trying to figure out why. So when we took a deeper dive in it, we realized because of the smell. The food itself had all the edges of the market. And when you walk through it, you can smell the food. And anyone who has had Indian food knows it smells good. So as soon as you smell it, you just want to go and have it. So it might be the smell of food that they like. So we started mapping the strong sense of smell that came from all these restaurants and the way it impacted the people who were walking. So if you ask me, food makes me happy. I go with my friends and I want to eat there. But that wasn't the case in the market. Like that wasn't the only case in the market. So we started trying to map out what makes, how are people feeling there? Like, are they happy with the food? What's going on? And then we realized when we looked at how people were feeling, we started like just looking at people and trying to map how they're feeling. And it was really creepy. I should tell you that. But this data set is an example of observational first-hand data collection, where you're just looking at people trying to figure out what's going on. And we saw a lot of high schoolers fighting with their partners in the middle of the parking lot, but everyone who's around food is pretty happy. So moving on from there, we realized that this is all more related to the people itself, but what about other species that interact with the market itself? So we started mapping everything, all animals that were part of the market. So this illustration shows squirrels that were running around the market. But there was so much more than that. Once we started looking at one thing, we realized, oh my God, there are so many dogs, pigeons, elephant man comes every morning and moves around the market. We have crows that are going around and eating scraps. And we started mapping all those relationships to actually understand what, if I want to construct a public square somewhere, this is all the things that I have to think about. And in creating that experience or mimicking that experience that you need. So now moving on, let's zoom out to a city level and change the medium and scope completely. This is a project that I worked with Urban System Lab called Oculus XR. It's a mixed reality application that leverages like users to with unique interactive geospatial maps of heat, flood, and other climate indicators in New York City. As cities face urgent socio-ecological crisis, there's an increasing need to respond with novel urban design interventions. New York is investing, I think, approximately $1 billion to that could potentially create conditions of further social inequity. Today, there are few ways to for communities to understand where and how, when like vulnerable population are exposed to heat waves, coastal flooding, and inland flooding. Oculus XR partially addresses this by bringing socio-ecological and infrastructure data together through an open source mobile app for exploring how, when, and for whom these resiliencies is built. The aim is to help shift thinking and understanding around climate risk data of varying scale, viewing proposed resiliency efforts in real time, and catalyzing participatory planning processes. And the intention is to increase the speed for interventions, community feedback, and improving scenario testing, aid in visual and information architectural practices for equitable adaptation in cities. As you can see, we went from a mobile application to XR, and we also have a desktop platform to analyze and showcase all these factors. And just a quick update on the medium when creating visualizations. There has been a really big potential medium, which is our mobile phones. So if you want to create an accessible visualization, that a story or a narrative that is mass, that you want the mass to take in, mobile might be the best choice to go there. So that's how we started and then moved to the desktop platforms. So these are some of the interfaces we designed to onboard users. The reason that I put these screens here is to showcase the importance of onboarding. Like, not everyone knows what urban flooding is, or what heating is, or just these complex definitions that have a different scientific meaning and different what I think is the meaning. So it's very important to onboard with this information. Zooming out a little bit more, understanding how cartography could be a really important and impactful medium to show very, very granular research. I worked on this map with an incredible researcher, Dawa. Dawa is researching on how religion impacts policy decision. This is Sikkim, part of India, and it is in a very interesting location because it sits between 3 different countries. And to paint a picture of Sikkim, it is beautiful, covered with picturesque native forests and native ecosystems. The indigenous population there considers the forest and the rivers as their spiritual elements. So while remote areas of the state are still indigenous people, the cities have become a hotspot for tourism and expansion. The Indian government was considering building a lot of dams to conserve water here so that city could thrive. But she found an interesting takeaway here. Because river was a spiritual element, the community could actually fight to cancel the dams and to save their spiritual elements of the river and forest itself, while the city population could not do that. So as you can see, a lot of dams that were near the monasteries were canceled, and only ones near the cities were built. So just print cartography itself as a medium could be very impactful to unfold a very, very geolocation-based stories. Now, let's pivot again and move towards exploring how technology and art could be overlapped to create and impactful visualization that pushes climate action. As we all know, ocean covers 70% of the Earth's surface and have been habitat for countless thriving species for centuries. Astonishingly, scientists estimate that 91% of ocean species remain unidentified, and staggering 95% of the ocean remains unexplored. However, our ocean systems are facing significant decline, primarily because of human-induced climate change, overfishing, and population. So this visualization, this is a painting by James, which is part of Met Museum, and it's called Ocean Life. I took an inspiration from it, started removing all the species to showcase the empty and barren oceans and how they're going to impact us. So I'm just here trying to show different mediums that y'all could use to figure out what best fits the narrative or the story that you're trying to tell. One of my personal favorite methods of doing stuff is static art visualizations. They're quick, they're impactful, it doesn't need a lot of training, and a lot of artists, including me, have realized the potential of data in art. So the top left image showcases how the greenhouse gases have increased in 10 years each, while the top right image shows the deforestation and how it has changed, or I think it is 1/3 in 16 years. Yes. The one that is my favorite in this is the bottom left, where it is a showcase of lakes in Ahmedabad, which is Makarba Lake in Sarkhej. But these lakes were interconnected and created a system where when one lake fills up, it would overflow in another one, and then it would overflow in another one, filling up all the 3 lakes by the end of the monsoon. But these ecosystems have been dying due to illegal soil mining and a lot of just taking out water from these systems to empower urban population. It has just killed this whole lake. So as you can see, these really small circles is what is left right now. And again, this shows the ocean acidification and how when you really zoom into a coral reef, how it's just broken by the acidification itself. I'm a little bit on time, so I'm going to run through the presentation now. So as you can see, the first image from here, I realized, what if I create it as a space? Like, I'm an architecture student, I need to learn to do that. So I created this I created the concept of this installation where a visitor would enter this installation being able to walk, and then it would become more and more difficult for the visitor to actually go through it, and by the end of it, they would be gasping for air. And this experience makes the carbon emissions very tangible, and the air pollution creates an air pollution awareness. This is one of my most recent installations. I work with Jake Barton on this. If you haven't checked his work, please do. He's doing amazing work on climate. But quick context on this project: climate is always talked as doom and gloom. Everything is bad. Like, everything's just going to end. But we need much more optimism and real life solutions to help you with it. So this XR experience tries to showcase the impact of your own decisions. So before you go in this experience, you chat with your future self and you tell them that what do you want to do? How does your future look like? And then what decisions you made to get to that future. And then you go to this experience box, and then you see how your decisions impacted the future. So I'm going to quickly show this video. uh, that's all for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much again for having me.